as much as we are all awakening and ascending and coming into this new vision of how the world can be, we are still, with the underlying energy of how things have been for a very long time. And a lot of
Mm.
us, our life experience has been one of feeling like there's limited resources, feeling like we have to scrap and get in there and claim our peace. And I think that's a big part of it, is that survival mode instinct, feeling
Mhm.
like there's threats because feeling like you're not safe and there's not enough to go around.
Beloved heart, before we begin, I have a special gift for you. If you've been feeling the intensity of Earth's rising plasma light codes and want to stay centered in your body and heart and energy field, I've created a free light language quantum grounding activation just for you. This transmission will help you stabilize, integrate, and align with the new frequencies flowing onto the planet. Simply join my mailing list. See the link that's in the show notes to receive instant access. Let's ground into the light together. This is the transfiguration of the new you. Hello, welcome back to another episode. I'm Monica Bermudez. I'm your host for Ascended Earth, and we have a special guest here with us, Aurea Wolf, who is coming with a lot of great background when it comes to human design and her own uniqueness based on her experience. So I want to welcome you to this conversation because we're going to have a conversation about, our gifts not fitting the mold, um, moving from this whole spiritual competition to the community because I've noticed there's been some patterns resurfacing a lot, which comes to survival and being competitive. And so, yeah, this will be a very interesting conversation because it all ties in also to our human design blueprint as well. So, welcome, Aurea, to my podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Monica, for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to this topic. And if you could just start off maybe by telling us a little bit about yourself so the audience gets to know you more.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I think like a lot of us, I kind of feel like I've lived like five lifetimes already in this one. I just turned 47, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I'm also, I'm not on the tail end either, right smack in the middle of my journey. So, like you, Monica, I grew up on the East Coast, DC suburbs, so DC attitude, all that.
Yeah, all that, yes.
We talked about that many times. Um, so, it's kind of funny to see our journey, from where we start to where we end up going and how like life just throws you these curveballs you never saw coming. I grew up East Coast, DC. My dad did computer systems for the Pentagon. It is, very 3D world, very practical, logical, logistical,
Yeah,
what you can see with your eyes, what you can verify, you know.
yeah.
I always had kind of a sense there was something bigger, but I didn't grow up in a religious background or like a spiritual environment at all.
Mhm.
I majored in media production in college. I went to GW, George Washington. I majored in electronic media. I worked for a short period at the Reuters news desk right before I graduated college. It was in the lead up to the Iraq War. So that was a really interesting world to be in for a period. I saw the lead up to the war and I saw my colleagues at work getting excited to declare war because there were going to be a lot of contracts and everyone was going to make a lot of money. And so I had a very visceral reaction to that. And I just outright rejected it. I was like, I can't, this is not the
Mhm.
kind of career I want to have. So I decided to pivot and I didn't pursue a media career. Um, I moved to San Diego after college and I lived there for 13 years. I started and built a successful service business with my ex-husband, a very brick and mortar service-based business, but I grew it really quickly to over $250,000 a year. We had all
Amazing.
kinds of big name clientele, and we had a very cushy life. Just the two of us, no employees, made a lot of money. Um,
Mm,
but I wasn't really happy doing that work. I knew it wasn't my calling, but I didn't yet really know what my calling was.
mm,
Then we decided to start a family. Um, as a lot of times you don't really know what you don't know until you're in the middle of it. And by the time we were going to have our second kid, we decided it was time to sell the business, sell the house, sell the other vacation rental we had in Big Bear, and then we relocated to Texas. When I was 6 months pregnant with my second kid. And at the point where we were supposed to kind of have our grand reinvention and go into a new phase of life, more family time, kind of leverage the things we had built up so far and start a new business. It didn't really work out that way. And he became a full-time alcoholic and prescription
mm,
drug. And it was a nightmare. So he became kind of like a very unsafe person. And when he went down the road of choosing violence, obviously I had to choose my children and I ended up becoming a single mom. So not what I expected approaching 40 with two
yeah.
toddlers, no income, and now all by myself. So we had a little journey up through Seattle because I have an older sister that lives up there. So we were up there for a little bit, and that didn't end up being the support system that I really needed at the time. And somehow we ended up here in Mount Shasta. And I honestly don't think I'd ever really heard of Mount Shasta before I was here. I think maybe in passing, but I didn't know this whole other, spiritual aspect. I didn't
Dimensional space.
know the vortex. I didn't know
Yeah.
Lemurians. I never heard any of that stuff until we came here. And so it's kind of funny. My kids and I ended up here, and then people would say things like, it's an energy vortex. And,
Mhm.
like, what the hell does that mean? Or they'd be like, the mountain brings people here. And I'm like, that is a weird thing to say.
Right? I
You
still think
know,
it's a weird thing to say though.
Right? It is. You're like, what the F are you talking about? You people, what? It was like it did not register. And I was still going through a lot of like recovery and this whole period of getting separated and becoming a single parent and trying to figure out how do I start over at this point and what are the compromises that I'm okay with making and what's absolutely like a deal breaker when it comes to raising my two young kids. And really, I wanted to be with my kids as much as possible. And then also trying to figure out how do I reinvent myself and build a new business on my own as a single mom with like no resources.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's a big puzzle to solve. And so that's really like what sparked my whole spiritual awakening is I was going through what felt like really impossible things and I saw no practical way out
Hmm.
really. And
Hmm.
I wasn't getting the material help
Hmm.
from the places you normally would expect to be able to turn. And so I just kind of started asking the sky. It's just said, help me. I don't just help me. I don't know who I'm even talking to, but I need help. I can't do
Yeah.
this by myself. And so just letting myself be more open to, I know that I can't do this all on my own, and just letting things come in. And I just started
Hmm.
leaning more into my intuitive knowing on things and
Hmm.
just following the path where it took me. And that it's at that point in 2019 that I discovered human design.
Hmm.
And so it actually just kind of happened in passing. I
Hmm.
think I was on Facebook and I was scrolling through, and somebody mentioned something about human design, and something about the phrase just like
Hmm.
sparked my curiosity.
Hmm.
So I thought, what is that? And so I looked it up and I was like, that's really interesting. So I ran my chart and I was never like into astrology before, like I'd read my horoscope like most people, and you're like, I mean, it kind of fits, but it's kind of vague and
Yeah.
take it or leave it. So I didn't really know much about it. And then when I started reading all the details and the descriptions of the different pieces of my human design chart, I was like, whoa, this is like eerily accurate, And this is coming from someone I like to question things and I like to think, hey, this is an interesting concept. But I need to feel and see that it is going somewhere for me to really continue to entertain it. And I was like, this is crazy how accurate this is. And then I ran my charts for my two kids, and at the time they were 2 and 5. And it was so cool because you can literally see the difference in their personalities and the way they just approach life in general. It was
Hmm.
all mapped out in a blueprint. And I could see like how my son was like more reserved and held back, and he would kind of evaluate things before he would jump in. And my daughter, who was 2, was much more like just jump in there and do things. And when I
Yeah.
started seeing them mapped out to where exactly it came from in their chart, I was like mind blown. And so at that point, I decided to jump right in and let's just do a certification course so I can learn all the things. And so I was doing it. And then I was laughing when I was doing my course because when we get to the part about your profile is two lines. It's like a pretty prominent piece of your chart, and it's two numbers, and mine is a 1-3 profile. And the one is like you want to research all the information and learn all the things. And the 3 is like it seems kind of paradoxical, but it's like you learn by trial and error and just experience. You just test it and see what happens, and then you make your adjustments. And so like those two numbers together is how I approach everything in my whole life experience, even down to how I decided to learn about human design, right? I saw it, it was interesting, and I'm just going to jump in and do a certification and learn everything I can learn and then play around and tinker with it and see what happens. And so it was just, I was laughing at myself because I was like, this is so descriptive. And also, I was like, my whole life makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
All my choices, the way I've approached things, the things I've decided to do and not do, just like the more things I learned, the more things clicked into place. And I finally felt like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm actually doing it exactly the way I'm supposed to do it. And this is just my process. And that's perfectly fine. It's
Hmm.
not the same as everybody's, and that's okay. And so the more I leaned into it and I just kept learning and playing with it. And so it's been a process. It's been now, 6, no, 7 years. This is 7 years now. So I
Yeah.
completed my whole 7 years of my first experiment with it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's been really fun. It's been an interesting process. So that's kind of how I got into human design.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
basically got to know yourself better through the human design because to me, like you and I have talked about this, it's like more of this human original blueprint is what I, sense from that. And that's why like, you're like a perfect person to talk about this conversation when it comes to like survival because I know you've experienced it, 10 times worse probably but at some level, so we're seeing a lot of conversation, right? Like in unity and collaboration in spiritual communities.
Mhm.
Yet there is this comparison and competition that still exists that I'm sensing and seeing from a survival perspective. Why can another person's, success or visibility register as a threat, even when we consciously believe there's room for everyone?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Um, and I think really it comes down to the simple answer is it's a journey for all of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like as much as we are all awakening and ascending and coming into this new vision of how the world can be, we are still with the underlying energy of how things have been for a very long time. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us, our life experience has been one of feeling like there's limited resources, feeling like we have to scrap and get in there and claim our peace. And I think that's a big part of it is that survival mode instinct, right? Feeling
Mm-hmm.
like there's threats because feeling like you're not safe and there's not enough to go around. As much as we like to think there is,
Mm-hmm.
we can't necessarily make that immediate quantum leap from here immediately to here as much as we would love to
Mm-hmm.
short circuit, shortcut the pathway to get from here to there. It's not quite that easy for most of us yet. It's a
Yeah.
process, and we really have to work to practice and embody it and remind ourselves. And I think with that too, give ourselves some grace because we are not perfect beings. We are here having a human experience, and you're gonna have missteps, you're gonna have mistakes, and that's okay as long as you're willing to recognize it and then do your best to make corrections.
Yeah, so it's really part of the awareness when that happens and just acknowledge it, that that pattern is still there because it's like you said, there's this conditioning programming that we had to endure for like eons.
Yeah.
And there's probably like different layers of it that are like resurfacing now, especially during these energies.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to touch on too is we didn't touch on this before, but um, one of the things I learned when I discovered human design. So keep in mind this is like summer of 2019,
Hmm.
so before the whole COVID thing blew up.
Hmm.
Is for the last about 400 years or so, we've had an overall underlying energy on this planet. And in human design, it's called the cross of planning. So
Oh,
the
wow.
major energy on the planet has been one of organization, building systems and industry, and big, huge organizations that were originally intended to help create systems that are going to help support the human race and our development and kind of organize and make systems that work. Right. If you think about our agricultural systems, our industrial complex, the government systems, the religious organizations, right? On a fundamental level, right? We could talk other things, but on a
Hmm.
fundamental level, the structure is meant to create organizations so that these things can be built in a more efficient way. Right? There's maybe some other aspects to that we see now as well, but that's the overall concept of it. Now, as I learned in 2019 is 2027, we actually shift to the next one. So we are moving out of the cross of planning into the next one, which is known as the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So the cross of
Hmm.
the sleeping phoenix is actually more the era of the individual. So it really does have an energy of knowing yourself more deeply, knowing who you authentically are. And from my viewpoint, knowing like what God blueprinted you with specifically for your
Hmm.
part of the mission and your
Hmm.
purpose here on the planet to build towards the collective. So the more all of us start moving into that era and accepting that whole mission, right? Understanding ourselves more deeply, knowing what we are here to do,
Hmm.
understanding our piece of the puzzle, knowing how we interact with others, not only can we be more in our purpose and deliver a higher expression of what that purpose is, but it also allows not only more authenticity with ourselves, but more authentic
Hmm.
expression and more authentic connection with other people around us. So
Hmm.
for our partnerships, for our families, for our communities, for our business
Hmm.
partnerships, everybody really benefits.
Hmm.
So it's not the air of the individual from a selfish standpoint, but it's
Hmm.
more from the ripple effect that carries out and how it creates a more
Hmm.
thriving and healthier collaboration
Hmm.
and collective
Yeah.
everybody. So that's I think a really important piece of that too is the
Hmm.
underlying energy for a very long time has been that, but we
Hmm.
really are on the last little bit. And when
Interesting.
when I learned about that, so it's 2019, it's right before COVID, and I was
Yeah.
like, so we are just now about to enter the last 7-year cycle where we're
Wow.
going to roll into that new whole new way of being. And I was
Yeah.
like, how in the world is the entire planet going to make that dramatic of a shift that fast? Like that's
Hmm.
coming soon.
We're in a quantum phase right now.
Well, and then lo and behold, like a few months later, as of the beginning of 2020, all of a sudden COVID lockdown, world is different, everything.
Exactly.
And then everyone's like in their own bubble, right?
Mhm.
And then so people are learning a lot more things online. People started having more awakenings. People started exploring new things. You're not physically in other people's aura all the time to have as much like
Good points.
energetic conditioning. So
Yeah.
just like
Yeah, that's
I was
mind blowing
I
though.
was like,
Like,
holy cow, that's how it happens.
yeah, so that's so mind blowing because it really lines up with astrology as well. Because a
Yeah.
lot of astrologers were saying the same thing about like 2020. A lot of planets were going into this retrograde, so that was an indication of going inward.
Hmm.
Which is what human design is also saying is jumping into this more getting to know yourself, being
Yeah.
in your authentic space, being
Mhm.
at your soul level essence, which is your true essence, as a human blueprint is integrating all of that. And the way to get to know yourself is also knowing your patterns as well. And that includes the shadow and the light, which, could be called gifts or talents, you know.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about it too, is when you look at your chart, like there's nothing innately good or bad about any element of your chart.
Mm-hmm.
Everything exists on a spectrum of expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have undefined areas, right? And those are areas that you don't have consistent energy in. So it's impacted by the people that you come into contact with and
Mm-hmm.
by the transits of the planets as they happen.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
feel differently in those areas depending on what the energy is around you,
Yeah.
because you don't have it defined. So there's shadow aspects of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you can predict your most common negative self-talk based on the
Mm-hmm.
centers you have open and undefined.
Yeah.
And then, but on the flip side of that, those are also the areas where you have a really great potential for wisdom in those areas because you
Mm-hmm.
do get a chance to sample and feel how it feels in different ways by being around different people and at different times based on the transits. So even the parts you don't have defined, that can also be a good thing. And then the pieces that you do have defined, it's consistent, and so you have those skills and those talents and those innate gifts
Mm-hmm.
naturally, but they're also shadow expressions of those things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you're in a shadow expression, it can come out as a negative way, and then there's a higher expression to that same gate or that same
Mm-hmm.
defined center, and then there's like the highest possible expression of that
Mm-hmm.
same gate as well. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's very similar to like gene keys, in that regard as well. I think you were explaining how gene key kind of branched out from the human design. 'Cause I didn't like really know like the whole history
Oh
behind
yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah, so Gene Keys is based on human design. It's really just another way of exploring your human design chart.
hmm.
So, briefly, we may or may not know. Ra is the guy who came out with the whole system of human design. He's the one that brought it and shared it with everybody. And this other man from England, his name is Richard Rudd. He discovered human design and he really got deep in it and he studied with Ra and he learned it so deeply that Ra actually gave him exclusive rights to do human design in the UK. So
Mm-hmm.
he was like really right up there, like one of the top people for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. And then one day he had kind of his own experience and he developed his own system for exploring human design. So his is called the Gene Keys. It really takes you on a specific sequence of looking at your gates. He's the one really that expanded on the spectrum of how each of the gates expresses, from the shadow side to the more positive side to like the most ideal, like highest expression of each
Mm-hmm.
theme that's in the gates.
Yeah.
So I like to study a lot of different things. That's my one line. And then I bring in my three line. I like to play around with things and see how they
Hmm.
mix and synthesize together. So yeah, I like to combine different things. And then I did my certification course through BG5. And they're the branch of the International Human Design School that looks at human design from a standpoint of how it impacts your business and
Yeah, I like that.
also when it comes to partnerships and groups, because
Yeah.
there's your individual chart, and then when you look at two charts together, you can predict where people will work well, where there
Hmm.
might be areas of potential conflicts. And then you can read like groups together and you can see how everyone
Hmm.
fits together. It's really
Yeah.
incredibly fascinating.
That's a really amazing skill, very unique skill to have because since a lot of the energy seems to be shuffling more into like soulpreneur, like entrepreneur type, having your own business, and maybe corporations now may start setting up interview systems and incorporating human design before instead of doing an interview, you know.
I mean,
So,
it would
yeah.
be beneficial because you can see where someone's innate gifts and skills lie. You can
Mhm.
see if they are uniquely wired for leadership.
Mhm.
And just because you have certain gifts that are very well desired by the pentas, what we call like the group of like up to
Yeah.
about five, um, you might have skills that work very well for the small group, but your highest gifts and skills might be in like upper management. And
Mhm.
so it might not be healthy for you long term to be in like an administrative role. If you have certain chart elements, you might be more better suited to be in a more leadership position,
Mhm.
or there's you can see a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so speaking of that, for people whose like innate gifts don't fit conventional labels, like say intuitives or the highly sensitives, energy practitioners, the channelers can have, difficulty explaining or validating those gifts to create like an even stronger, there's this whole need to try to prove themselves. So you have the X-Men from the mutants trying to prove themselves, that they have these telepathic abilities, telekinesis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does this, um, the difficulty, in the explaining and the validating of these gifts create an even stronger need, to wanting to prove themselves, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely a real question. I think there's a lot of layers to that.
Mm-hmm.
um one aspect for sure is when something is innate to you, when it's just your natural gift and it's how you are and it's how you experience the world and you always have, sometimes it's hard to put that into words because you're such a master at it and it's such a natural experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard sometimes to even wrap your head around the fact that not everybody just understands it, that not everybody can do that, that not everybody even knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes it creates this gap because number one, you have to understand that you are actually very uniquely special. And sometimes it takes other people pointing something out to us that they see in us before we go, oh, is that is that unusual? Like I thought everybody could do that. And because it's second nature to you, you just do it all the time like it's nothing. And then you see someone else struggle with it and you're like, oh, I guess I guess that's a natural talent. I guess that's a special thing that I do. So one, yeah, honor that and own it in yourself. That
Mm-hmm.
that is a special thing, and not everybody has that. And at the same time, the other person has gifts that you don't have naturally
Yeah.
either. So, a piece of it is that just understanding, even recognizing that it's special, or recognizing that not everybody immediately understands the words or the language that you're using. And then really the 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 real solution at that point is figuring out how do we build the bridge, right? How do we leave the right breadcrumbs to get the person that we're trying to speak to from where their place of understanding is
Mm-hmm.
to what our understanding is as best as we can, right? Because when we have mastery over something, it's
Mm-hmm.
easy for that whole gap to really collapse down and you kind of forget the steps from here to there. So sometimes that takes some conversations.
Yeah.
with other people to bounce things off of and make sure that they understand all the
Hmm.
pieces that you're laying out and help get clarification. Like, do you understand what I'm saying now? Or do now I have to explain this word or I have to explain this concept now because you still don't understand the
Hmm.
steps from there to here. That's a piece of it too. And so when we look at your human design chart, for instance, there's key words based on the themes of the gates that
Hmm.
you have in different positions on your chart,
Yeah.
right? So, like you have your conscious sun placement, it's like your most dominant theme in your whole chart. It really like sums up your life's mission and purpose right there.
Hmm.
And so we can explore the language of that particular
Yeah.
gate, right? And then same with when it comes to your message, right? Your marketing messaging, we
Hmm.
can look to your Mercury gate because Mercury does stand for your
Communication.
messaging, right?
Yeah.
So we can really get a lot of great information out of that gate as well. What's the
Hmm.
theme of that gate? What does it talk about? And then on top of that, there's lines. So we have 64 gates, and those will each be in different placements on your chart. And you won't have all 64, but you'll have a combination of them. And
Yeah.
on top of that, in each placement on your chart, you have a gate, and each gate also has an expression of one of six lines.
Mm.
So it just adds an extra little layer of nuance or flavor to the gate and how that theme expresses for you and that specific placement in your chart. And when you put it all together, it just makes the most beautiful little mosaic picture that is yours exclusively that nobody else has.
That's so cool. It's like dissecting the human blueprint and
Yeah.
knowing how to communicate it through your business and what you do. And, because I imagine like so many are gonna be coming online with, these talents and these innate gifts. And it's like, how do I express it? How do I communicate it? You
It
know?
can feel so overwhelming,
Yeah.
You're like, I've got a sense of what it is, but like I don't know the right words or
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And then, like we said, when you're a master at something, it can be really hard to figure out how to explain it or even to fully own what's
Hmm.
special, right? Or to fully own that your place that you came from, right? Like the
Hmm.
hardest moments that you've been through, a
Hmm.
lot of times that is exactly what you're here to help other people with. So
Yeah.
sometimes it just helps give clarity and it's not ever even really giving someone something brand new or shocking information, right? It's stuff that's in you already. You innately know these things, but it just brings words to it that
Yeah.
maybe you would have had a hard time coming up with on your own before. Like when I
Yeah.
did Afa's chart, he's like, it's like you just went in and wrote a book about my entire life, and it's like the most accurate book ever.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I haven't looked through mines yet because I know you did mines. There's like a lot, I mean, a lot of details. But, like when I was first like starting off, like trying to do like my own business, and doing like the channeling of light language, I had no idea how to like communicate or start, uh, talking about myself. Because for starters, I never really like talking about myself, period.
Yeah.
So how do I come from like being a private, mystic in the closet, coming out of the closet into the public spotlight, where I'm being guided, at
Right.
that point, the impulse was getting stronger. It's like, I don't know, like what I'm gonna say or how I'm going to communicate myself, or express myself. And I don't want to sound like I'm bragging either.
Right. Yeah. It's true. I feel like the human design, it really helps give you such like a permission slip that it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to fully own these things. You're like,
Yes.
this is special, it's right here. And then this other stuff, you're like, oh, you know what? It's okay that I hate doing that because
Yeah.
that's not how I'm wired to be anyway.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
okay that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really very good at this other thing
Mm-hmm.
because it's not really part of what I'm supposed to be doing anyway. So, it doesn't mean I can't do those things for a time, but it's not the
Interesting.
healthiest, highest use of my energy.
Yeah.
And maybe it would be better put to use if I outsource those specific
Outsource
things
it.
to
Yeah.
somebody who is in their zone of genius of working in those areas. And then
Yes.
we all support each other and we all have a higher expression of our work. We're all giving out much better output.
Yeah.
And, you know,
That's a good point.
it's that
Hmm.
whole ripple effect, like I'm
Yeah.
always talking about. It's the ripple effect of how it goes beyond
Yeah.
you and how it goes out into the world, and that we all get a better experience because we're
Yeah.
all delivering our highest expressions.
Yeah. And it goes back to the whole authenticity thing about like being true to yourself. Getting to know yourself is one aspect, one step, and human design is one way of doing that.
Absolutely. And you know, it's not the only way, but I think it's the best.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, after the way you like mixed it all with like business, it would make sense for somebody trying to get into business and understand their own talents and gifts and where they're coming from, how they're
I
going to communicate themselves or express
I
themselves,
could because there's so much like endless self-development work that we could all be doing,
Yeah.
right? And there's so many things we could work on. But at the end of the day, if we can take this whole big potential and hone it in and focus it right here, you know, like why not do that? Is when you use the charts, it's like, okay, this stuff and this stuff, I don't need that anymore. And this stuff and this stuff, I don't need that anymore either. And now I have a much more defined zone that I can kind of focus in and develop and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, so as we like move into like say collaboration and talking about like boundaries and all that, how do we move from like I need to protect my light from you to like your light doesn't threaten mine?
Ah, that is another excellent question, isn't it? And I think again, it comes to that same concept of like healing all our wounds of like feeling like there's limited resources and like we have
Mhm.
to be in there and be in competition with each other for the same pool of people, because at the end of the day we were each given a very unique set of skills and talents. We each have our own unique journey, right, of experiences and what we bring to the table. So the people that I can best serve, and the people that are going to be most attracted to what I have to offer and the way I am serving them is so uniquely different than the way somebody else comes at human design or any other
Mhm.
kind of, you know, business or transformational coaching space,
Yeah.
right? There really is no real competition at the end of the day because the people that are really meant for me are really only best served by what I can bring to the table at this point in their
Mhm.
journey. Now, that doesn't mean that a year from now, they haven't gotten the best things out of what they need from me right now. And now they're at a point in the journey where they then go off to somebody else, and that's the best person to serve them at that point in their journey. Um, but there really is no competition because nobody else can do it like you. And
Mhm.
the people that
Exactly.
need you for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, So before we get to the final part of this, final question or final thoughts, um, I just wanted to mention to the audience, first of all, thank you for still being here and listening to this. And also, if you want to reach out to Aurea, you'll find all her contact information in the show notes. And I do highly encourage you get with her, especially if you're looking to start your own business, you want to get to know yourself better and how that ties into your human blueprint. She's the one to go to. Believe me, it's a lot of great information in there. Um, so, Aurea, what would a spiritual community look like if we stopped ranking gifts and started recognizing the different gifts may, serve different roles within the collective?
Oh man, can you imagine?
Yeah, just imagine that.
Right? Let us all sit and just collectively envision that one for a while. Let's all
Yeah,
put that out
exactly.
there. Oh man, I think we're getting there. It's a process, like I said earlier, it's a
Mm,
journey. We got some human wounds we're still working on healing up, right?
pretty
But
much.
if we could finally move beyond the sense of competition and really more fully embrace collaboration and co-creation
Hmm.
together, just really staying in our own lane, really fully understanding and embodying what our unique skill sets, our unique gifts and talents, the journey that we've had, and how that actually serves us to turn our hardest moments and our biggest struggles into a moment of clarity and a process and a way to help other people. And then we let other people stay in their lane and do what they're here to do and let them
Hmm.
shine. Can you imagine if we're all shining our brightest and we're all just really focusing on honing our gifts and our messages and really just fully supporting the people that we're here to support and serve? We're all going to bring that higher level of production and creation out into the world. And we're all going to be able to weave our gifts together in such a beautiful and meaningful way. And I always say this with our Ohana Connect and our Ohana Malama Lama nonprofit that we have. It's like the more we embrace that and the more we move through that and we create that together, it really sends out this whole ripple effect. So we're healthier and more aligned and authentic, which means we deliver greater service, we deliver greater joy and greater work into the world. We have more authentic and more productive partnerships, both at home and in business. Our families are healthier, our businesses are healthier, our communities are healthier, and just all ships rise with the tide.
And so it is.
And so it is.
And honestly, I feel like being in our authenticity means also having a strong foundation in self-love, which would tie in and branch into like your own self-worth and your self-value to the point that you wouldn't really feel threatened by someone else who's doing something that may sound similar, like somebody else is doing, light language channel.
Mhm.
Embrace that because there is, there's still some uniqueness with each one who's doing like their own channeling,
Right?
but there's also a opportunity for collaboration and coming together as well.
Absolutely.
This
And
is an
there's plenty
example.
of messages to go around, right?
Exactly. Everybody comes with different experience, and that is the scars that we carry from our wounds that turn into wisdom, our
Absolutely.
own unique wisdom and experience.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Aurea, for sharing your wisdom on human design and, all the information that we just talked about. Thank you for being a guest.
Oh, I am so happy to do it. I could talk about this stuff all day long. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
I know you can. So, anyways, thank you, audience, for being here and listening to this. But share your comments and your insights with us. Connect with Aurea and get your reading done. Get to know yourself.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to click like, save, and share with others so they can also experience what you just experienced. And stay tuned for some more high vibe episodes. And I'll be connecting with you in the next quantum field. Sending you so much love.